It's Talking Pints. Dr. Lee Rotherham, welcome to the programme. Very good to see you. Now, you are a long-term, very consistent campaigner. You've been campaigning for many of the same issues over years and years with organisations like the Taxpayers Alliance. I sort of got to thinking, we've got the highest tax burden that we've had since Clement Attlee. How well do you think government's spending our money?
Well, let's compare now and back 25 years ago when the bumper bucks came out. I think there's more of an awareness that government isn't there to throw money at problems. I'm not convinced that it's widely appreciated that it needs to do better, because I think it's a lesson that has to be keeping relearned as people progress through Whitehall, people progress through the various institutions. And as you know full well from time over in Brussels, it's always spending somebody else's money over there, so that lesson is persistently never learned.
Well, it seemed over there that money was no object for anything. But I'm thinking really about the NHS. Extraordinary, isn't it? You know, we were having debates about whether we should increase to 7 or 8% of GDP our spending on the National Health Service. This row raged for many years. We're now spending 12% of our GDP on the NHS, 50% more than we were just a few years ago. It doesn't feel 50% better.
Well, certainly not if you're queuing for something. There are certain issues in politics which at times are on a pedestal, and it's politically dangerous to talk about them because it's seen as a dangerous subject, and as soon as you start touching on them, then you're seen as an enemy of the status quo and of rationality and an evil person almost, because you're trying to change something which has been put on so high a pedestal. The NHS, unfortunately, is one of them. For years, immigration has been another one, where if you wanted to discuss the issue, you were basically on the fringes of politics.
And, well, that's where there's a real danger.
I know, and there's a real danger with that. There's a real danger with that, because if you don't then turn a subject into a politically debatable and discussable subject, then what you're doing is you're creating a space for the absolutely extreme far left, uber far right characters to pop up and say, look, we're the people who represent you. And that's a deadly scenario. We saw it much more in continental Europe over the years, with the Front National and others, than we have in the UK, because it never quite got that stage. But with the NHS, the fact that we are, it's almost a taboo subject in politics. It's a dangerous situation to be in a democracy.
Well, of course, our electoral system has made it very difficult for other parties, other than two in England, to get anywhere. So it's been very, 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 very difficult, and that's why other parties across Europe get a foothold. Although I suspect Marine Le Pen is going to be the next president of France anyway.
I have no insight on that. I've got good contacts with the UPR, which is a small Gaullist and very sound policy. We have obviously different views on things like the role of the US and relationship with Washington, because they are Gaullists. But I mean, good luck to them.
Now, you were a Eurosceptic, long-term Eurosceptic. There was always a Eurosceptic wing of the Tory party, sort of Maastricht onwards. It was relatively small.
In Parliament?
In Parliament, relatively small. In the end, the Conservative Party, against their judgment, offered a referendum. They didn't want to do it.
Almost by accident.
Well, how much would they have lost to UKIP if they hadn't?
Yes, and the lesson, of course, of the European elections historically.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he had to fly the white flag on this. But Lee, you know, some of the most ardent Brexiteers are feeling a sense of frustration. You know, I've been talking and meeting some of Britain's inshore fishermen. You know, the little under 10-metre boats. You know, down to 7 metres. Some of them, people going out and they're catching mackerel on you know, hooked mackerel for markets and restaurants. Seeing more bureaucracy placed on them in many ways, and this goes for other sectors too, than when we were members of the European Union. There's a real frustration here.
Well, it's not surprising, because if you think about it, I mean, so one of the first things I did in politics, I started out working for Sir Richard Boddy, who was a Euro rebel who'd resigned the whip in practice, in principle, over the treatment of his Boston fishermen. So one of the first things I did was to go out to sea with the Boston trawlermen and see for myself. And the decline of that once great port was quite tragic, and we're not seeing that regeneration and renewal. We got things, to be honest, things have got to such a stage after so many years of the Common Fisheries Policy that it was never going to regenerate overnight. What is a disappointment is in the withdrawal treaty, of course, is that we didn't get control of our waters back to certainly not nowhere near the extent which we got. There is an incremental thing, but ultimately it was a cropper, or it fell a cropper to the late stage renegotiations when the deadline was approaching, and clearly it was bartered away, probably for transit rights and haulage rights.
For this,
but it doesn't help. It's got to be renegotiated again in another 3 years.
I know.
There's an ongoing hostage situation there with the French and the electricity connections.
I mean, we'd never have won Brexit without people turning out to say we've got to get back control of our borders. We'd never have got anywhere near winning it. And again, on that, there's really big disappointment. I mean, what I want to ask you, really, as someone that's been involved in and around the Conservative Party for many, many years, is this a Conservative Party? Yes.
Don't forget, political parties are always broad churches. Some are much more cathedral-like than others. Others are much more like chapels.
Yeah.
And fitting everybody in, it takes a bit of effort, but at least you've got a clear, concise, condensed set of principles and beliefs and objectives. So within that great hall of the cathedral, yes, there is conservatism somewhere, and of course those who
That's
are...
not very...
what I'm saying is...
So we have to look and hunt to find conservatives.
What I'm saying is, you might have to go to the cloisters rather than to the altar. The Conservative Party since Margaret Thatcher has been a disappointment from those heyday days for Thatcherites. Because that was the high watermark of free market principles and sovereignty and the belief in the state and on the individual and personal responsibility, all these things.
Yeah.
Now, I think we are a lot closer to those days than we have been in many past incarnations of prime ministers. So I'm not entirely despondent. I would like to go much further.
Yeah. Right.
And there is, of course, a manifesto battle yet to be fought.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I think the globalists are in charge personally, but we'll see. Now, you've done a bit of sponsorship and advertising for the reserves, what we used to call Territorial Army. Been an important thing to you.
Very much so. Thoroughly recommend that people join it. It's hugely rewarding in terms of personal development. The level of camaraderie is incredible, and it's massively character building. And you're serving your country.
Yeah.
Even if you don't deploy overseas, I mean, I've done operational tours, but even if you don't deploy overseas, you're supporting the nation's defence.
No, a good ad.
Join today.
For a very good cause. And finally, the Museum of Brexit.
Yes.
I don't know anything about it. What the hell is it?
Right. Well, OK, so a few of us a couple of years ago were spotted that we were starting to bin various things which we had for donkey's years, because the type of the Eurosceptic campaigning was no longer going on. It was kind of like remaining threads. So rather than bin stuff, we decided, well, it'd be much better to preserve it. And the best way to preserve it is through a set of archives, museum, and an actual display, a physical and library, a physical place where people can learn about what's happened. Not just about recent years, 2016, but going back into the deep stuff, the complicated stuff about what is sovereignty, what is free trade, where does that come from, what makes the country different from its continental counterparts, and it's a sense of Europeanism.
If your museum pretends it was the Conservative Party that caused Brexit, then you're making a big mistake.
I can promise you, there's in terms of the planning, there's a whole section there on UKIP. And I'm going to nobble you for bits for the Nigel Farage case on that. But this is a critical point.
Yeah.
It will be fair and balanced, because although...
And where's it going to be?
We've been looking in particular at Peterborough and also Boston as part of the epicentre where Brexit happened. We're still open-minded. It depends on sites which are available at the time when we get the funding. But the key point is it'll be fair and balanced, and we're doing an appeal right now for people to rootle around and send in stuff, because we've got 50 drop-off points around the country, county drop-off points, which are not going to be open for that much longer.
Okay.
But it's an opportunity for people to easily hand things over.
If people think they've got things of value and things that are interesting, how do they get there?
Right. So if you look at the website, museumofbrexit.org, or you look at the Twitter account, you can see details there about where your local drop-off points are and the easiest way to drop them off.
Museumofbrexit.org.
Yeah.
Got that, Lee? Pleasure to have you.
Awesomeness. I've not been keeping up with you. I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry about that. Thank you.